Oregon just became the first domino to fall. Their DMV sent out a notice that stopped everyone in their tracks. Effective immediately, they're no longer issuing limited term CDLs or commercial learner permits to non-domicile holders. Gone. Finished. What I'm about to share with you could change everything you thought you knew about who's sitting behind the wheel of that big rig next to you on the highway. And trust me, after 3 days of digging through reports, enforcement actions, and regulatory documents, that this goes way deeper than anyone's talking about. Hey everybody, welcome back to Young Diesel Trucking Reacts. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button because we dive deep into the real issues affecting professional truck drivers, not the watered down version you'll get anywhere else. And this one's gonna make some people uncomfortable, but we're gonna talk about it anyway because someone has to. Let me paint you a picture. It's September 29th. Most drivers are thinking about making their next delivery, maybe what they're having for dinner at the next truck stop. But while you were focused on your logbook, the entire game just changed. The Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration dropped a rule that's about to shake this industry to its core. And I'm not being dramatic here. Stick with me. Oregon just became the first domino to fall. Their DMV sent out a notice that stopped everyone in their tracks. Effective immediately, they're no longer issuing limited term CDLs or commercial learner permits to non-domicile holders. Gone. Finished. And this isn't some bureaucratic hiccup. This affects 1,400 CDL holders in Oregon alone. 1,400 professional drivers who woke up one morning and found out their path to keeping a CDL just disappeared. Now, before you think this is just an Oregon problem, let me stop you right there. This is a federal mandate. Every single state is going to fall in line. It's not if, it's when. The FMCSA made it crystal clear. States must only issue CDLs to people who meet the updated federal standards. Period. No exceptions, no workarounds, no looking the other way. But here's where it gets really interesting. And I mean, sit back in your seat interesting. While Oregon was making their announcement, something was happening in Oklahoma that nobody saw coming. Or maybe they did, and they just weren't ready to admit it. The Oklahoma Highway Patrol, Oklahoma Bureau of Narcotics, and Immigration and Customs Enforcement decided to run a little operation. 3 days. That's all it took. 3 days at their ports of entry. They stopped vehicles coming through, commercial trucks, professional drivers, people who are supposed to be vetted, licensed, and legal to operate these massive machines on public roads. Here's the number that should terrify every single one of you. 25%. 1 out of every 4 people they encountered didn't have proper documentation to legally drive in this country. Not expired licenses, not wrong endorsements, no legal right to be behind the wheel at all. In 3 days, they arrested over 120 individuals for immigration violations and turned them over to ICE. Stop and think about that for a second. You're out there grinding. You went through CDL school. You passed your tests. You deal with the DOT breathing down your neck about every single line in your logbook. You sacrifice time with your family. You miss birthdays, anniversaries, holidays, and 1 out of every 4 commercial vehicles they checked had someone who had no business being there in the first place. But Oklahoma's not done. They made it clear this isn't a one-time operation. This is the new normal. They're going to keep running these checkpoints. They're going to keep pulling trucks. And they're going to keep arresting people who shouldn't be operating commercial vehicles on American roads. Now let's head north to Wyoming because this is where things get absolutely wild. The sheriff up there didn't just talk about the problem. He did something that's going to send shockwaves through every truck stop, every terminal, and every dispatch office in the country. He swore in special deputies. Their only job, find and remove unlicensed and undocumented semi-truck drivers from Wyoming roads. Not warnings, not citations, arrest, jail time, immediate removal from service. The sheriff went on record with a number that's hard to wrap your head around. He estimates there are 130,000 undocumented or unlicensed truck drivers operating in this country right now. 130,000. That's not a small problem. That's not some statistical anomaly. That's a full-blown crisis that nobody wanted to talk about until now. The sheriff made it clear, zero tolerance. If you're operating a commercial vehicle without proper documentation, you're going to jail. End of story. And here's what really gets me fired up about this. While we're out here dealing with ELD mandates, hair follicle tests, CSA scores, and every other regulation they can dream up, there's been this massive undercurrent of drivers who weren't playing by any rules at all. None. And the crazy part? The system allowed it to happen. I know this is controversial. I know some of you are going to push back in the comments, but let me be crystal clear about where I stand on this. I support these enforcement actions 100%, and here's why. And beyond the safety argument, there's something else we need to talk about. Something that affects every single driver watching this video right now. Economics, supply and demand, basic marketplace dynamics that determine what you get paid to do this job. When you flood the market with drivers who are willing to work for anything, who have no leverage, who can't complain about conditions or pay because they're not supposed to be here in the first place, what do you think happens to wages? They crater. They've been cratering for years. And one of the biggest reasons is that there's been this shadow workforce undercutting rates across the board. I'm not making this political. I'm making this economic. When I started driving, experienced drivers were making good money, real money, the kind of money that justified the lifestyle. Now, I'm making less per mile than I did 5 years ago. Less. Despite inflation, despite cost of living increases, despite having more experience and taking on more responsibility, that's not sustainable. That's not fair. And that's not how you build a professional industry that attracts and retains quality drivers. Here's another piece of this puzzle that nobody wants to talk about. The shippers, the people who actually own the freight that's moving across this country. Right now, they get to completely wash their hands of any responsibility for who's driving their products. They contract with a freight broker. The broker finds the cheapest carrier. The carrier finds the cheapest driver, and if something goes wrong, the shipper just points at everyone else and says, "Not my problem." That needs to end. If a load of your product is being driven by someone who's undocumented, unlicensed, or unqualified, you should be held accountable. Your company's name should be in the news story. Your legal team should be answering questions, because right now, there's zero incentive for shippers to care about who's actually moving their freight as long as it shows up on time and cheap. Imagine if we changed that. Imagine if shippers had to verify that every driver moving their products was properly licensed, properly trained, and legally allowed to work in this country. Imagine if there were real penalties, real consequences for using cut-rate carriers that employ questionable drivers. The entire dynamic would shift overnight. Rates would have to go up. Driver quality would improve, safety would improve, and maybe, just maybe, this profession would start getting the respect it deserves. But here's the question everyone's asking. Will these crackdowns actually lead to better pay for professional drivers? And honestly, I wish I could give you a simple answer. In theory, yes. If you remove 130,000 drivers from the market, supply goes down. Demand stays the same or increases. Basic economics says rates should go up. But we're not dealing with a simple market here. We're dealing with an industry that's found every possible way to suppress driver wages for decades. The big carriers will scream about driver shortages. They already are. But what they really mean is there's a shortage of drivers willing to work for what they're offering. If they paid better, provided better benefits, treated drivers like professionals instead of replaceable cogs, there wouldn't be a shortage. There would be a waiting list. So will enforcement of CDL standards lead to higher pay? Maybe. Eventually, if we're lucky. But it's going to take more than just removing unqualified drivers. It's going to take a fundamental restructuring of how this industry values professional truck drivers. And that brings me to my final point, the one that's going to determine whether any of this actually matters in the long run. We, as professional drivers, have to demand better. We have to stop accepting poverty wages for skilled labor. We have to stop letting brokers and mega carriers treat us like we're expendable. The enforcement actions in Oklahoma and Wyoming, the federal rule changes, Oregon shutting down non-domicile CDLs, all of that is just the beginning. It's creating an opportunity, an opening, a chance to reset the standards for what it means to be a professional truck driver in this country. But opportunities don't matter if you don't take advantage of them. If we just sit back and accept whatever scraps the industry throws at us, nothing will change. The unqualified drivers will get replaced by the next batch of underpaid drivers, and the cycle continues. I'm fired up about this because I love this industry. I love the freedom of the road. I love the skill it takes to back a 53-footer into a tight dock. I love the responsibility of delivering critical goods that keep this country running. But I'm tired of watching this profession get disrespected, underpaid, and undervalued. These enforcement actions are a step in the right direction for safety. Absolutely, but they need to be followed by real changes in how drivers are compensated, how carriers operate, and how shippers take responsibility for their supply chains. So here's what I want to know from you. Drop a comment below. Do you think these CDL crackdowns are going to lead to better pay? Do you think they'll improve safety? Are you worried about how this affects the driver shortage narrative? Do you support zero tolerance enforcement, or do you think there's a better approach? This is a conversation the trucking community needs to have, not the sanitized corporate version, not the political spin, the real, honest, ground-level perspective from the people who actually turn the wheels. If you made it this far, thank you for watching. Hit that like button, share this video with other drivers who need to hear this, and subscribe if you haven't already, because we're going to keep covering the real issues affecting professional truck drivers. No fluff, no corporate talking points, just the truth. Stay safe out there, keep the shiny side up, and remember, you're a professional. Act like it. Demand to be treated like it. I'll see you in the next one.